Hello, my name is Ben Sayer. In this video I'm going to walk you through adding information to an existing source entry in Lineascope. So we'll begin by clicking in through the source that we're working with. So I click Sources on the navigation bar, and I'll click the link for the source from which I gathered the information. So here's the source detail sheet, and this is where you will be if you had just finished entering the source. And down at the bottom you have the information table, which right now is empty, where you can add information. But first we need to actually bring up the source itself, which in this case we have a link to it. So I'm going to open that in a new tab. So I just clicked on that to open it here. And there is the obituary from this online newspaper. So to make this simple, I'm going to copy that and paste it into a text document. Now I'm not going to copy this verbatim into my database because it is new information, and so it's copyrighted. So I don't have, as far as I know, the legal right to grab that and stick it in my database. I'm not a lawyer, so if you have questions about the legality of what you're doing copyright-wise, you should contact an attorney and not take my word for it. And there's the legal disclaimer done. So now that I have this where I can see it over here, as I abstract it, I will click Add Information at the bottom. And so the first thing that I need to do is decide how I'm going to break up the information, how many information items I will capture within Lineascope. And there are three principles that I use in series to determine that. And the first one has to do with the quality of the information that I'm capturing. And so if there's information within this source that I know is primary, I'll capture that primary information separately from any secondary information. This information in this obituary is all secondary because I don't know who wrote it. So that primary versus secondary information quality is not a terribly helpful principle for me to use here. So the good news is I have a second one, and that is this citation detail. So I also consider this because I generally try to keep information that I captured from different places within a source in separate information entries. So if it were a source were a book and I captured information from non-contiguous pages, I would likely create separate information items for each page or page range. So say I captured some information from page 5 and page 123, I would capture those as separate information entries, where if I captured information from pages 5 and 6, I might create those as one information entry and just enter the page range as the citation detail. In this case, we're talking about an online newspaper obituary, so there is no such thing as page numbers. They're not separate links or anything like that. So the citation detail doesn't really help me at all to decide how to split up these information into different bite-sized chunks that I can use for analysis. But that leads us to the third principle that I use, and that is how I'm going to use the information within analysis. I'll likely analyze the vital information separately from the relationship information that's in here. And then I also noted in the first read through that there's also some hobby and occupation information within this source. And it looks like the relationship information is going to be a little bit lengthy, and so I may have to break that into two because it may exceed the length limitation on this field that I currently have. but I'm going to try to get it into one. So I think that what I'll try to do here in the planning is to create one information entry for vital information, the birth, death, and funeral service information that's contained in this obituary. A second item for the hobby and occupation information, and a third information entry for the relationship items. So I'll start out this by doing the vitals, and I'll capture the name as it is written in this obituary. So I'm going to put it in quotes and transcribe it just as it is written in the article. And continue capturing the rest of the vital information here. Now I have the information about the death and birth and funeral entered into the information representation field, this text box. And so, as I said, it's secondary information because I don't know who wrote the obituary, and I can be relatively certain that it was not Ruth, and so I don't know that it was primary information. Down in notes, I'm going to make a note that I abstracted this information, and I'll put in my name so that other researchers can know who did the abstraction. And I'm going to enter in the link of the article in here and click Submit. That will take us to the information detail sheet, where I could go through and make assertions about the information that was gleaned from that source by adding evidence items, so multiple evidence items for this one information detail sheet. And that's actually the way that I would typically do that. I would go and analyze the evidence from this while it's fresh in my head, and then go back and add the other information entries. But then again, it might just depend on my mood that day and what kinds of things I wanted to do. In this case, I want to show you capturing the information from a source, so I'm going to go back and add the other two information entries from this source. So we can do that simply by clicking on this link for the source, this citation, and that'll take us back to the source detail sheet, where at the bottom you can see the representation information that I just added, the notes, and in this case the lack of citation detail because there was no citation detail. So we'll click Add Information, and I'll go ahead and enter in the additional information. Now that I have the hobby information and occupational information captured from there, I'm going to leave the information quality set to secondary. I'll make the note about the abstraction again. And I'll paste the link to the article and press Submit. Again, we're on the information details sheet, so I'll click on the citation to take me back to the source details sheet. We can see now we have two information entries for this one obituary, and I'll add one more by clicking Add Information. And since I have the link in my clipboard, I'm going to paste it in here before I get too much farther along. And in this box I will enter in the relationship information that I gleaned from that source. I have that all entered in there, so I've captured the survivors, her children, stepchildren, and in-law children, and those whose deaths preceded hers, her sons, daughters, grandchildren, and a stepson. We'll leave the information quality set to secondary. I'll add the note about it being abstracted by yours truly, and the link that we entered previously, and click Submit. And now if I click back here, as I said, at this point you would want to add evidence to these items, but that's outside the scope of this video. So I want to show you that we have that source and these pieces of information that were gleaned from it.